What is
January 26th or 27th?
27th.
27th. It's about 1 o'clock on a Sunday. We're here to interview Shirley Gilbert. We have Dawn is present, Dawn Bristol. I'm Damon, and Jenny Bristol, Rachel, and Glenn. And to start off, let's see here.
Well, just
First
tell
of
us
all,
a little bit about yourself.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was born in Chester, Illinois, and my mom and dad lived there because my dad worked at the knitting mill in Chester, and they made hose, nylon hosiery.
For women?
During the war. I mean, or during the war, I guess before the war was really going big time, because after he left there, he went to Small Arms and made ammunition for...
Grandpa did?
Yeah, Grandpa Reed.
What year was that?
Oh, I was in, I never did go to school in Chester. I went to kindergarten when we moved to St. Louis. So whatever year that'd be in the 40s, I don't know what exact, 42, 43, something like that. And then he worked at Small Arms. So, but they had built a new house in Chester where we lived.
Really? They built a new house?
And it's still there now. And
Where's it at? What street is it on?
I don't know. High Street?
It's in town then?
Yeah, it's in town.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I don't remember too much living there. I can remember walking to the school there and picking up my brother Eugene. We called him Eugene back then. Because he was in, I guess, be about second grade when we left there. And then we moved to the city. We lived in apartments. I can remember being in an apartment, and Eugene and I had the measles and had all the shades down. Back then you didn't no light. And I can remember peeking out when Mom wasn't looking, and we watched a monkey grinder man playing a grinding machine. This little monkey was doing things. That just stands out in my mind, and I don't know why. But anyway, I'd never seen one before. And I can remember going to kindergarten. I went, I think, the whole sum of maybe 2 weeks. I was making...
Graduated early?
I made it home faster than Mom could get home from kindergarten. She walked me, and then I run home, and I'd beat her home because she might have to stop at the store or something. So she decided she was going to take me out because I was going to get killed. And I cried every day.
Oh,
I was a good crier.
How old was Cletus when you went to
Cletus was in, he would have been in second or third grade there.
Okay.
And we went to school there. In fact, we moved from there to Buchanan Street and rented a house there. And by the way, my grandpa Reed, Joe Reed, he lived with us from the time we moved to St. Louis till I almost graduated from high school.
Huh.
He was always lived with us. But anyway, he didn't work too. He wasn't very workable. That's all I can say. But my dad worked at Small Arms, and that was during the war. And we had just about everything you could want. And other kids didn't. Other kids, because see, I guess he worked for the Small Arms. It was really a good job. I had, I don't know how many dolls. We had bikes. We had everything. And then Small Arms was finished because the war was over. Oh, getting back before that, though. I can remember the day, or the week that we moved to St. Louis from Chester, the day Pearl Harbor was bombed.
Really?
Myself, my mother, and my Aunt Lois were all in a movie theater. And I was like kindergartner. That's one of the first things I can kind of remember. They stopped the movie and told us, come out on the stage that Pearl Harbor was bombed, and everybody was saying, oh my goodness, and they were crying and everything. I thought, well, why'd they stop the movie? How you are when you're a kid. So I can remember that real vividly. And I can remember also when living in St. Louis, riding the streetcars. I could ride the old ones, and they didn't make me sick. If I rode the new ones, I threw up every time. So we had to wait till old ones came through before we could get on them. And my mom used to take us down to Famous every Christmas. We got to see Santa Claus down there. And he gave us a coloring book and colors, and we got an apple and an orange. I'll never forget that either. That was really a big treat. And I went to school at George Washington Grade School on Page. I went to first grade, second grade, 2 years there. And I took dance lessons, and I did that in Overland. And I took violin lessons at Rittner High School. And Eugene took drum lessons, and he took dance lessons with us. And we left there because the Small Arms closed, and we moved to Stanton. We were all thrilled to death.
Why did you? Why did Dad want
Yeah, why did Grandpa want to do that?
Because Uncle Floyd had a farm out here. We could move out here, and we could live on the farm for nothing if we would just fix it up, and it needed a lot of fixing. And he would drive back and forth to Wagner Electric to work
Which was where?
in St.
So
Louis.
Okay.
that was quite a big deal back then. That's a long drive.
Yeah, they drove every day.
Uncle Floyd owned that farm before you guys
Uh-huh.
did? I did not know that.
In fact, we never did own it. Uncle Floyd left it to Dad when he died.
Really?
Because we had put all the money in it. We never did own that farm. And Dad had built a new barn on it. He'd done all those things, but we really didn't own it.
So when you very first moved there was no electric.
No electric and no running water. And it was really thrilling. Because we came from all electric, running water, 2-story house, and we went there to live in a 3-room dump, is what it really was. And they had to convert our electric wash machine into a gas one.
Oh.
We had to trade our electric stove for a gas stove. We had to heat our water on a stove where we had hot water up there coming out of the faucet. And when we were out in the boonies, I mean, when we lived on the farm, when I lived in St. Louis, the streetcar ran right by my house. We could just get on any place. And you go down the street and get an ice cream cones. I mean, you could do everything. We moved out here. You didn't see anybody. You were just out there on the farm. And we had bikes, but shoot, to ride a bike, it was all gravel roads. And you just, well, and Mom wouldn't let us go very far, you know. But we had go-karts. We did play with go-karts. We brought them out with us. And we used to have, after we finally got to go to school. See, when we first moved out here, we didn't move to the farm. We moved to Aunt Dorothy's house. That's Darlene Dace's and Frankie Woodcock's mom.
Okay.
She had just had a baby, and she was having a big operation for a rupture or something. So we came out here and lived at their house for 2 weeks till she could get back from the hospital. And we really got educated. They was big farming kids. We had snakes wrapped around our necks.
Oh, God.
We tried to learn how to swing with vines, because Frankie could do that all the way from his house, all the way up to the bus stop. He never touched the ground.
And you saw him do this?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yes,
he
yes.
did. Okay.
And they had a well, which I thought was really neat. They had a well where they had a bucket, and you dropped it down in there, and the water came up. The coldest, purest water you ever tasted. Or at our house, we had to crank it on the cistern, you know, and it was water brought in and all that kind of stuff. So I really liked that part. And living at the farm, back to my living at Aunt Dorothy's. We didn't get to go to school when everybody else got to start that year. We lived in Oak Grove Village. That's where the farm, Oak Grove School District. That's where our farm sat. And we wanted to go to Stanton School. Well, Oak Grove said no. They wouldn't pay our tuition to go. Well, they wouldn't supply us with a school bus. And we couldn't get to their school without a school bus. And the Stanton school bus went right by the drive up there at the end of the road where Mom and Dad lived. So we were like 2 to 3 weeks late till they could have board meetings and everybody could discuss it for us to go to Stanton School. So finally we get to go to Stanton School. I went to school in a 2-room schoolhouse. 1 through the 4th grade was in one room, and 4 through the 8th was in the other. Wow. And I learned more there than I ever did in high school at Sullivan. You had one-on-one. If you didn't know it, they worked with you until you learned it.
How many kids were in your class, Mom?
In my class, I guess it was like 4. you know. And if they didn't have enough in one class, then you went from like the 4th grade, you went on to the 6th, and then the next year you went back and did the 5th grade and did it that way. Depended on where they had all the kids. And I graduated from there, and then we went to, and then my dad was working at Hammer Store. And I don't know why he went to work at Hammer Store for a while, but he must have quit Wagner or something, and then he worked there. And I used to take all my friends from school down, and we'd charge until Dad caught us. His bill got so big. But all the kids loved me. Huh?
Hammer Store was kind of like the old Japan and street store for us,
it
right?
sold everything. In fact, the bus stopped there. The Greyhound bus, and picked up people. And Mr. and Mrs. Hammer lived upstairs, and their family. And Dad worked there, I guess, about 3 years.
Was that to pay off your charges?
Well, he probably had to work longer since we charged. And they sold everything. They sold clothes. They sold liquor. The mail came there. It was just an all-around store. Then I can remember whenever the weather was bad that Dad would take us to school, because I hated to miss school. I love school. And I know one time we had 13 kids in our car.
Oh my God.
And he took us all to school in the snow, because he was going to work at Hammers anyway. And so he dropped us off there because the school bus didn't run. And back then, when the school bus didn't run, they didn't close Sullivan School. Sullivan School went ahead and had school. But we were not counted absent. That's the way they had to do it, because the buses couldn't get in. And then I went to high school. And when I went to high school, I rode the school bus. But then, finally, my dad let me use his pickup truck. And boy, was that really a dinger. I had flat tires all the time. People would always help me change them. Oh, and learning to drive, that was the other thing. You didn't just learn to drive. You got in Dad's car with Dad, and you learned how to shift. Of course, it was a shifting one on the floorboard. And you would learn how to shift, and he would stop you, and you had to turn off the motor in the middle of a steep hill and start it up and let the clutch out in order to get up it before you... Then you went home, you took a tire off, and you changed the tire, and I'm talking about, you took the tube out of it, you put it in the water and found out where the thing was, you patched the little booger, and then you put it back on. That was before you could ever drive the car.
Wow.
And the tractor, my mother never wanted me to drive the tractor.
Why?
And when we got down, because she's afraid of everything, Mother was always afraid of everything, thought I'd get killed. So...
Put an eye out.
Put an eye.
Well, now,
so
but...
whenever I was down helping Dad in the fields, because he always thought he was the big farmer. He never was. But anyway, he would let me drive the tractor up the hill. Well, it had a fence and a gate there. So I was driving it up, and he was opening the gate. And I let out the clutch, and it reared up with me. And he kept yelling, put it in the clutch, and he ran to me, and he grabbed it and pushed it down, or it would have reared up, and I went all the way down. And the first thing he said was, "Don't tell your mother." And then, let's see, I went to high school, drove the little truck, and had a great time in high school. Really loved it. Graduated from high school, went to Nebraska for 2 weeks.
When did you graduate? What year?
1954. And I went to Nebraska for 2 weeks with my cousin Laverne and her children. Kind of a little vacation. When I was in high school, we lived in Sullivan for 2 years, while Cletus went to Eugene. They decided that he should be in town for his last 2 years of high school so that he could participate in everything. My mom and dad gave up a lot of stuff for us to do things. So we lived on Division Street, where Rachel lived for a while, that little funny little house on the left. It didn't look like that then. But anyway, we lived there for a while, and then we moved and lived behind it was behind the Sunrise Motel out there on Elmont, going out towards middle school. We lived there. In fact, we lived there, and when we left, Cleves wanted to leave a mark where we left there. He took his fist and he hit the wall, and darn if it didn't go right through the wall. We had to hang a calendar over it before we could leave. It was a rental. And but we did live in town for a while.
So now was your grandpa with you then?
No. Now, Grandpa wasn't with us then. He was in a nursing home.
Okay.
Grandpa went blind. So he was in Van Deeren's nursing home down in Stanton, down there by the farm. Electric or anything. We got electric at our house on the farm, though, finally. Boy, it was a wonderful day. And we also finally got to have running water when we went out the second time, I guess it was. Because Dad had the house kind of redone those 2 years we were living in in Sullivan. And we went back and things were a little better. I had a bedroom. Before, I didn't even have a bedroom. I slept in the living room with my brother and my grandpa growing up. I mean, we just had a kitchen, a living room, and Mom and Dad's bedroom, and a bath. That's all we had. We didn't have that when we first got there. We had to go to the outhouse. Wonderful. Yeah.
When did you get your telephone?
We got our telephone when everybody out there decided that we could get on the line. You had to be approved by all of the members on the line. If they didn't want you on there, you could not get on it. And
because you could pick up and listen to what they were saying,
because you could hear everything what they say. And you hear everybody's ring. When your phone rang, it wasn't just you. Ours was a long and 2 shorts. My Aunt Dorothy's was 4 shorts. I can remember everybody's because I piked on them. But the ones that was really fun was the ones that lived in Stanton. Their names was Harms. They were German. And when they called anybody, they talked in German. We couldn't hear. I mean, we couldn't understand it.
Wonder why they did that.
I wonder. But anyway, all my boyfriends that would call me for a date, everybody knew it in the whole county. And they'd listen. You could hear them. They didn't make any bones about it. But anyway, let's see, what else?
Did you guys have TV?
No, we had radio. And it was battery. We had no electricity. And the battery was about that long and about that high and about that wide. And it would last, I don't know how long it was last. It wouldn't last more than a month, I don't think. And we listened to it every evening. Mom had to listen to her soaps during the day a little bit. But we really had to save that battery, you know. Because it cost quite a bit.
How did you keep, like, your milk cold?
We had a ice box. It was really called an ice box. It had a big thing of ice that they put in there. And Dad worked at Hammer's store, so he brought one home every day.
I see.
And it would drip into a dripping pan, and it kept everything nice. Except in the winter, we would put a thing outside the window in the kitchen, and Mom would put stuff into that to keep it cold.
Oh.
And that's when I learned how to eat snow ice cream. It's really good. You got to get clean snow, though. And you add, let's see, sugar, vanilla, and a little bit of milk. And you whip it up, and boy, it's good. It really is. You'd be surprised. And let's see. I didn't like living on the farm. I'm sorry, I'm not a farmer's wife. I didn't like picking beans because I always got itched all over, and something always bit me. Here I am. And because when I was in high school, I went to work. When I was still in high school, I worked at Herb Saunders drugstore. Loved it. It's where all the kids hung out before and after the show. We had pinball machines. That, in fact, the booth in my basement is from that drugstore. Huh. Miss Imes happened to have it, and she wanted to know if I'd like to have it. And then I worked at Carp's department store, and that's where Mother worked. And worked there so many hours. I worked there on Saturday nights, I guess, mostly. And I worked at Herb's drugstores during the day. Well, it was kind of getting me down. I was working there and then going over to Carp's to work and going to school, and I was getting pretty well wore out, so I had to give up one of my jobs. And I got to go to work at Herb Saunders before I was 16. Back then, if your parents would sign a paper you could go to work 15 or I guess 14, whatever you wanted to. And my mom and dad did, so I could work there. And let's see, what else did I do when I was in high school?
What's the most trouble you got into?
I got kicked out of class and sent to the principal in high school. Well, the deal was, it's never my fault.
Well, of course not.
But it really wasn't this time. We were in an English class, and Pat Schmidt asked me for a pencil. And I gave it to her. And he says, out! So, out we had to go. I don't know if we weren't supposed to hand anybody a pencil or what. Nobody had made that rule.
Oh, that's a likely story.
So I got to send to the principal, and she just thought it was funny. She laughed, which is really odd for this Mrs. Glauser.
Oh, my.
Miss Glauser was a toughie. She laughed because I had never gotten in trouble before. Oh, and then after that, my senior year, I got in trouble. We decided that the day after the prom, we'd all just skip school, the whole senior class.
What day of the week was prom?
I guess it was during the week because we were just going to skip the next day. We got teachers to go with us. They all got fired.
Wow.
And we had to go to school an extra day on a Saturday. All of us. And what she done, she brought each one in to tell who was in their car.
Oh.
And I had everybody clued because I had an excuse. I was cleaning up. I had an excuse to clean up after the prom. And this one kid ratted on me. I never did like him. So I had to spend the day at class that Saturday too. And what we had to do, it was in the study hall. Miss Glauser was the teacher.
Uh-oh.
You had to go in and get an encyclopedia. And you had to come out and write a report on one subject. And it couldn't be double spaced. Oh gosh, she gave all kinds of rules. You could not do what your neighbor was doing. You could not talk to your neighbor. And you had to write, I think it was 5 pages. It was a long time. Well, anyway, I did that. That was the other thing I got in trouble for. Oh, and I did do one thing that wasn't very nice. Getting ready for, I didn't mean to. Getting ready for the junior senior prom. Back then you couldn't give flowers. You had to go out and get them.
Okay.
In people's gardens or yards or fields or something like that. So Harry Eaton and I and Verna Peters, which lived out past my farm, way out. She was way out there. In fact, she lived in town going to school because no bus ran that far. That's how far it was. We got Harry Eaton's dad's, Mr. Eaton from Eaton Funeral Home, his car, and we went out to collect flowers. And we got the flowers and everything. Well, coming back, I said to Harry, "Can I drive your car?" "Well, yeah," I said. Because I had my truck. I was driving all the time. Well, kind of cut a thing a little short there at the post where the fence, the gate was. I took a chrome strip off the side of the car. Oh. So Harry said, "You get over there and I'll tear," and he took the blame.
Oh, that was
nice. Harry's always been nice,
He took the heat.
Oh, I hated to come back to town.
So who were some of your best friends?
My best friend, I guess, was back in school. I'm trying to think. Mostly boys. Ronnie Bragg. Kids from Stanton, I guess, was the boys. Because I was there was only 2 girls in the graduating class of Stanton. It was me and then Barbara Coon. And Barbara Coon looked like she was 40 when she was 10. She wore these funny old dresses. And, she was a nice girl, but she just wasn't that much fun, So, I guess Ronnie Bragg, and I'm trying to think who else down there was my friends. Herb Bitzbacker, and, Lloyd Shue, I guess, was then, because his brother was real close to my brother. And Mildred Van Dieren, and I ran around some with Pat Schmidt, not a lot. Marianne Landing, and Verna Peters. She was a pretty good friend of mine. She lived with Mr. and Mrs. Vogelsang, Marianne Vogelsang's mother.
Really?
She lived there all week and went home on the weekends. And she kind of paid for her room and board by helping clean and cook and do dishes and that kind of stuff. Her sister had done that too before her, because they didn't live so far out there, no buses go there. And I guess my best times at school was all of them. I enjoyed every day I went to school. Now Eugene didn't. I did. I loved school. That's why I think I could have went on to go to college if I had somebody who could pay for it. But I really enjoyed it.
What'd you want to be?
It didn't make me any difference. I just wanted more schooling. All the time.
Did you do activities in school, like any sports or
Oh,
choir?
yeah. I was cheerleader for a year,
It's not
and
sport.
and I was always in May Day as an attendant.
Which
Never
was?
made May Queen.
What was May Day?
May Day was the biggie. At the end of the year, every year we had a May Queen, and they wound the maypole. The little kids
Wrapped it
did
with
that.
ribbons,
They
yeah.
put on a play. And, I mean, the whole school and all, everybody's family was there. And it used to be in the amphitheater outside. And it was just beautiful. We had all the trees in the back. It was just a pretty place to do this. I think they did that for maybe, I bet 25 years they had done that, because they'd had that many queens that one time when they had all the queens come that had been. And that was kind of a thing to do, because you were nominated by your class of who was going to be in it. And then all the school, from grade school all the way up, voted on the queen. And normally the queens would always be somebody that was like baton twirlers and all that stuff, because the kids knew them. They were always in everything. I sang in the choir. Never was good, but I sang in the choir. And went to a lot of different places. Went to state. Went to Rolla.
For contests.
Missed one of the contests, so we were downtown shopping. Didn't know what time it was. We really got ate up for that one. Almost kicked out of the choir. Me and Shirley Jean Schmidt. Let's see, what else can I remember? And I can remember also going back to St. Louis when I lived there on Buchanan Street with my mom and dad and my brother. And my brother's 2 years older than I am, and his name's Cletus Eugene. And Christmas was a big deal at our house. Always has been a big deal since I was a kid. Even in Chester. When we went to bed at night, there was no tree, nothing in our house. We woke up in the morning, the Christmas tree was up, all decorated, all the presents was under the tree. Santa Claus had come.
Your poor parents.
And I guess...
And he brought the tree.
And he brought the tree and decorated it.
What the hell
That was
is
the
that?
way they did it back then.
Huh.
And I guess I was a pretty big girl before I ever didn't believe in Santa.
Yeah. Well, geez.
I mean, come on.
Well, if you don't believe, would he keep coming?
Well, probably not. And back then, when your stockings that was hung up, you got peanuts in the shell, you got apples and oranges. There was no toys in your stockings.
Who told you that Santa Claus? I bet it was Cletus, wasn't it?
There was no Santa
Yeah.
Claus? Yeah. He loved it. And then my cousin Dolores, we used to play at my Aunt Maud's, which was up the road from us. Down in there, they had kind of like a little house. We used to roll potato peelings to make cigarettes and all that stuff, back then. And she's the one who told me about sex. I'll never forget it.
The same conversation.
When we were down at the Playhouse,
Yeah.
I said to her, my mom and dad don't do that. She says they do too. She was really... I didn't believe her. And let's see, I'm trying to think of a lot of things. Oh, whenever we lived on the farm and Cletus wasn't old enough to drive, we had a car, but the gear shift kept popping out of gear. It was just an old car. Dad had a different one, or he would ride with my uncle, I guess. Uncle James, they worked at Wagner Electric again. And when it was really, really cold, because we like to froze to death one time waiting for the school bus when we first moved out from the city. We waited up there for 5 hours in the snow. Because, see, nobody had a watch, my brother and I. and we didn't want to miss school. I mean, we thought that was terrible to miss school. And nothing ever came. No cars, no nothing. So we finally, after I started crying, I was so cold, Clay said, well, we'll go home. So we went home. Both our feet were froze.
Oh my.
And that's why I have cramps in my feet now. I can't go ice skating or anything. Mom put us to bed with hot water bottles and all kinds of stuff. I can remember my feet hurting me so bad with them hot water bottles on there. So after that, Dad built us a shed to wait for the school bus in. It didn't have any heat, but it kept the wind and stuff off of you, you know. And I think probably then my Uncle Floyd gave Cleus a watch. Because my Uncle Floyd was always the one giving us watches. And he was old enough, I guess, if I was in third or fourth grade, he would have been about 7th grade. So I bet he gave him a watch so we'd know what time.
Dad built one of those down here for us.
Yeah, we had one down here at the end of the road for the kids because it was so cold waiting for that school bus.